Amen. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Year 11, the exams are fast approaching. I can remember this period of time. I've had 4 youngsters that have all gone through at various different times here at Bishop Luffer, and I understand the stress that brings, and I also understand the conversations that you might be having at home, because I've had very similar conversations, often along the lines of, "Oh, what have you done today?" "Not a lot, really." That type of thing. Or, "Oh, how's the revision going?" "Yeah, writing down lots of notes. I'm copying up my class notes." And really what we're trying to do tonight is trying to give you an idea of some strategies that you can use to help support your youngsters as they're preparing for the examinations that are coming up at the end of the year. We've got to remember the mock examinations, they're a practice for the final thing. We spend an awful lot of time here at school teaching youngsters how to take information on board, how to encode information. And as we get closer to exams, we've got to teach them to decode that information, how to get the information that's all stored in here. It's magical computer, far better than that computer in the corner or the computers that you may have in your pockets at this moment in time. We can remember so much information, but we want to think about strategies that we can use to encourage our youngsters to be able to get that information down in the exams so that they can get the best marks possible for them and really open up their futures going forwards. Some key dates that are coming up for you, particularly this term. Now, the first one's already happened. We had Destinations Morning that took place last week. So all the Year 11 youngsters were spoken to by Mr. Saunders, our head of sixth form, by 2 representatives of Chichester College, one that spoke about apprenticeships and one that spoke about college courses, and a representative from Chichester University that spoke to the youngsters about aspirations moving forward, going towards university. So we really hope that your youngster has a vision of where they want to go. It's not the end of the world if their mind isn't made up yet. It's not unusual for us to have sixth formers that still don't have a clue what they want to do next year. It's not unusual for us to have year 13s that still don't have a clue what they're doing. Our aim is to give them ideas. Our aim is to help them throughout the time that they're with us come up with an answer, something that they can aspire to do later on. So Destinations Morning was last week. Mock exams week. Mock exams week is fast approaching. It's the first week back after half term. In fact, if I just show you what the timetable looks like, the timetable looks a little bit like this. And you can see on the timetable, it actually goes on beyond just that first week. We made the choice last year to try to extend the period of time so that we weren't cramming so many exams into a short period of time. Found the stress levels got really, really high for the youngsters. So we have extended that now to more than a week so that there are slots where the youngsters have an opportunity to de-escalate, to think about their revision a little bit more rather than just going from exam to exam to exam. And you will also notice that later on that week, we've still got language exams taking place, and we've also got the art mock exam, which will take place during that period of time. This mock exam timetable is available on the school website, and the school website clearly will show you any important information that's coming up that you can use to support your youngsters in their preparation. A week after the mock exams take place, we have a mock results assembly. That is a wake-up call. It's often a wake-up call for lots and lots of our youngsters. This is where you're at this moment in time. If you were to sit your GCSEs, these are the marks that you will get. We try to make it as supportive as possible, because we will get youngsters that are very surprised, very pleased with the marks that they get, but we'll also get youngsters that are perhaps a little bit disappointed. And we want to make that process a good, worthwhile experience for them and say, yeah, we need to work a little bit harder, but not all is lost at this stage. And it's certainly not. And I hope that message will come across tonight. We've got a careers fair that will be taking place here at Bishop Luffer in the sports hall on the 20th of November. So just shortly after that set of mock exam results. We've got parents and carers consultation evening at the back end of November, and I'm really, really pleased to say, hot off the press, it's going to be a live one. So it's going to be here on site. So you can meet those teachers live, face to face, and have those conversations with the teachers. And I know that might have been a long time since that's happened, and it's happened virtually in the past. We've got sixth form taster day for all of our year 11s that takes place on the 13th of December. So that's that week building into the Christmas break. And we will also release the year 11 action plans, that are the plans that will be made by these students over the actions that they want to take in their specific subjects in order to get the best grades possible. I'm actually going to hand over to some guests that we've got tonight. So we've got Mark and we've got Ewan from CYE who are going to promote an activity which is going to take place at Easter.
Great.
So can I just get you to...
Yeah, I'm going to press a song.
That's the one.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction and allowing us to speak about an exciting event that we've got at CYE. It's lovely to see some people I recognise. Hello. Before I talk too much, my name's Mark. I'm the Centre Director of CYE. Who knows of Christian Youth Enterprises Sailing Centre? There's quite a few of us. Some people won't know anything at all. Okay, that's absolutely fine. So we work with quite a lot of schools in the local area. Some of your primary school children might have come to us on a residential trip. Now, we understand what it's a bit like for you guys sitting in those chairs thinking, how am I going to get my kids through GCSEs? How am I going to support them? How am I going to give them the best shot that they can? And we have devised an event that we've been running for a number of years now that has really been successful in supporting those young people. You care about their future, and so do we. Cast your minds forward, if you can, beyond the term of events that has already been explained to you, to Easter break. Cast your minds to there for a minute with me. The exams are approaching, the pressure's mounting, and you again are really trying to support your young people. It's a big break, isn't it? It's 2 weeks, and it's kind of over to you to support them to revise in that time. Well, we can help you for 6 days of that. We can help you. So we have devised, it's quite small on there, isn't it, actually? But I'll talk you through it. We've devised an event where children are supported to revise 4 hours every day in structured sessions that have breaks, and then they then are able to have activities and enjoyment and fun and life-building stuff in the afternoons and in the evenings to prep them for tomorrow, where they can then knuckle down and crack on with some revision the following day. And it follows that pattern. Every day they are supported to revise in the things that they need to do. And we have found over the years that there's been a really good result from that. The young people who come on this event do tell us that it has really changed how they have focused in that time and how they've been able to change their grades through that 2-week period, to really develop some good strategies, some good structures, some good habits to then take them through until the exam period itself. So as you can see there, we create a revision plan with them. We're on hand for that 4 hours of focused revision. We've got lots of different revision spaces, large uncluttered desks, regular breaks. We keep them fed with really healthy home-cooked food that we supply for them on our ship where they'll be staying. It's like a floating hotel. They're not going to go off to, the Mediterranean. Don't panic. We have a dedicated and passionate team who really care about working with young people. And as Ewan will explain in just a second, as he used to be one of our campers and is now one of our staff, we make sure that we have lively discussions about the Christian faith as part of the ethos of your school. We accord with that. We have the ability to allow those children to test their knowledge with our staff team. And our staff team really get involved in where they're at and kind of bring that revision alive for them. It is supervised, so there's no kind of like, oh, I'm just going to have half an hour on Instagram. No, we don't permit that. We do make sure that they're knuckling down. And it's a full activity program. So there'll be kayaking, there'll be sailing, there'll be raft building, there'll be on the water, there'll be tunneling in our land activities, there'll be on the assault course, really kind of charging back their brains ready for the next thing. And it's obviously just down the road from you guys. And it's all inclusive. So basically, as soon as you hand them over to us, you don't need to worry. We will take care of everything. We will feed them, give them activities, and give them opportunities to revise really sensibly. There's information on your chairs. So there's a little card about Easter revision, and then there's a kind of calendar for all our events. If you want to kind of find out a bit more, use the little QR code where it says book here, and zero in on that. Okay, so sort of get your phones out, have a look at that, and then maybe look at it later. But before I close, Ewan, you came on Easter revision for your A-levels, didn't you, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
He's far too young, it's quite annoying. Tell me just a couple of things. So why did you come in the first place?
So just before, so I grew up coming to CYE on summer camps, that sort of stuff, and then just before my A-levels, just after mocks, I wasn't doing the best, and Mum was like, right, you need a way of like actually knuckling down. But I was very aware that I needed a break because I'm not the sort of person that can just sit and work. It just doesn't work like that. So I was like, okay, what about CYE? But and I backed all the really structured revision. So then I went on that, and that's helped me a lot since then.
Great. And how did it feel when you were actually on the camp? Was it oppressive, or was it just take the mickey, you can go wherever you like? What was it actually like?
It was very weirdly supportive. That might sound a bit weird and non-biased, but it was really supportive in the way that I was kind of rocked up. I was like, okay, these guys aren't going to know much because, in different subjects, and I was doing some quite unique ones as well. But everyone helped me. Everyone was there, like, respectful of how I needed to learn as well. So not just like shoving it down your throat, like they were there in how I needed it. So whether it be one moment I need testing on something, they were there, or they just needed to make sure I was focusing. They was just like, keep working, stuff which my mum would have been very happy with. But yeah, and I found it had a massive impact on then going back home to revise, because I meant actually like revision was not scary because I was able to have that 4 hours of like solid, really good learning, really good like recap and revision questions, all that sort of stuff. And then 4 hours, the rest of the day, to then unplug and really rest, which also helps in the long term as well. Coming into the exam season, like rest is so important. It's like balances it so well. So.
Great. And do you think it changed your grades? That's kind of an important question, isn't it?
Yeah. So I came in just before Easter. I was predicted a U, a E, and a D. Pretty low. And then I came out after that, and I got a B, 2 C's, and a merit as well. So. Yeah, and like I'm not just saying this going to work there. It genuinely did change a lot. So I was like, okay, actually, revision's not too bad. I can sit and like 4 hours of really productive revision, a lot of support. I was like, okay, actually, now I can do this. And then the rest meant that coming into that exam season, which for me started straight after Easter, because my subject was like, okay, I'm rested, but I'm also prepared. And I was like, cool, and I did it, and I did. So
great. Yeah. And what would you say to someone, a young person considering this kind of event?
Do it. It sounds a bit wacky, but it's so much fun, and it's really productive as well. Like it really changed a lot for me in my revision, and yeah, it helped me and like see it and just be like, actually, no, that is achievable, so I'm going to do it. And like having people that are actually a lot of people that volunteer are going into teaching. It's quite a good time for them to experience. They've also got people that have just come out of exams as well themselves. So there's a lot of really good balance of like real life kind of situational help available for it. So yeah, I heavily recommend. It's also really good fun.
Let's give you a round of applause. Thank you. So if you're interested, grab one of the flyers, look at the little QR code and jump on the book now bit. You'll find it in camps. So our events are sectioned up into various sub sections, looking for it in camps, and there's a bit more information in there. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you. And I just need to say, Ewan told me actually before he spoke tonight that last year we advertised it on the evening. It was booked up by the next morning. So actually you do need to be quite quick off the marks if you want to get booked in for that opportunity. It is a fantastic opportunity.
I'll stay to the end if you've got any questions. You've got to go, but I'll stay.
Thank you. So interesting, wasn't it? Structured support, being prepared. That's what it's all about. When we're thinking about preparing ourselves for exams, it is about making sure that we've got a structure in place. Nothing is going to surprise us. What can we do to help support that situation if we're a parent? We can be inquisitive, we can ask questions. You might not get an answer that you're going to like, but actually if you keep asking the question, you will eventually get a decent response. Be persistent, be interested. Make sure that our youngsters have got the resources to learn. In the advertisement there for the revision week, big desk, somewhere to work, somewhere to actually have some space, someone to test you. So that might be about asking questions. Your youngsters are going through various different processes in class at the moment that will include things like preparing flashcards. All our staff in all our subjects will promote the use of flashcards. Well, those flashcards can live at home and you can ask your youngsters questions from those flashcards. Big process that we introduced last year, just after Christmas, was study capture. It's not very popular amongst our youngsters. They're like, do I have to do this? What's going to happen if I don't do this? And I keep saying, we're not going to punish you if you don't do it. But of the 81 students who did do it last year, their average grade was 0.81 higher than the students that chose not to do it last year. So we had youngsters that did it for 6 months and they averaged 0.81 of a grade higher. That's nearly an entire grade. The process works. The process of making a memory come to the forefront of your mind will ensure that our youngsters have much, much stronger synapses happening and will be able to remember the information much more easily because they're used to recalling, used to decoding information. I mentioned the use of flashcards, and our second speaker in a moment will talk, I'm so sure will talk about flashcards and the 3-box process. The idea of setting yourself up with flashcards that you know the information inside out, that you're only going to visit once a month, for the information that you are fairly confident that you know that you visit every 2 weeks, and for the information that you really don't understand at all, that you've got to keep revisiting that information, having it in a separate box. Flashcards are great for knowledge. They're great for application, but quite often our youngsters now are tested on synopsis papers and synopsis questions, analyze, evaluate, discuss. And actually, perhaps a better method of revising that is to produce mind maps, when we're actually thinking about a concept and getting as much information down as possible. So we quite often, we might refer to these as topics on a page within our classrooms. And then it was great to hear Ewan talking about different ways of studying. So he said that sometimes I needed to sit down and I needed to learn information and I needed to look it up in my textbooks, or I needed to look it up in my notes. Sometimes it's about practicing, getting that information out. So that is about asking questions. Maybe we still have the book open next to us to help support that process. But possibly, and in fact, definitely the most important process is the testing process. Can I sit down with past papers and can I answer those questions? All of our subject areas have revision sites, revision Google sites that the youngsters can access. And on those revision Google sites are past papers where we can practice those questions week in, week out in the build up to the exams, not only just for these mock exams, but thinking longer term towards the final exams, which will take place in May. It was also great to hear that idea of, oh, I'm going to study for a bit and then I'm going to have some me time. If Mr. Saunders, our head of sixth form, was here, he would be saying 8-8-8. That's the advice that we give to our sixth formers. 8 hours sleeping, 8 hours me time, 8 hours studying. If you really want to make the most of this, the time that you've got, that's how we get the information out. That's how we remember information, 8-8-8. And I know that Andrew, when he speaks to you in a moment, will be talking to you about the periods of time that we can concentrate for, how long our working memory is able to deal with new information. And we'll also talk about effortful subjects. So we'll ask the youngsters, whenever they go through their topic lists for their subjects, what do you know really well? What do you think you pretty much know? What do you really not remember at all? And the ones that come up with red, the ones that we don't really remember much, those need to be our effortful subjects. Those are the ones that we put in a little bit more revision time than some of the other subjects so that we can start to consolidate that information. Now, at this point, I'm actually going to hand over to Andrew Wright from Action Your Potential. He would normally be here live. He's not able to do that tonight, so he's actually joining us virtually. So I'm going to hand over to you, Andrew. I hope you can hear me.
I can. Hopefully everyone can hear me, Tim. I'll have my video on and people maybe can even see me. And I'm going to share my slides. Fingers crossed the technology doesn't fail us. Can you see my slides now?
We can, yeah.
Brilliant, because I don't want to see my face on that big screen. That's awful. Can I apologise for not being with you in person? I was in Margate and I couldn't get us all the way across West Sussex. I got as far as my house. So I'm going to present from here. I'm just going to go full screen on my presentation. Let me know if it disappears for some reason. Hopefully it won't do that. I just need to drag it across so I can access presentation mode. Can you still see that?
We can, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so it's really interesting to listen to all of that wonderful advice and support, and it's a brilliant school to be in to support students. And what I'm going to do tonight is talk about the amazing bit of kit at the top of the children's necks, and to get them excited about the fact that they can really manage their GCSEs effectively. If you think about GCSEs, there are many aspects of GCSEs that young people will scratch their heads about. They will say, why are you teaching me this? Why am I having to learn about the manufacture of cement? Why are we that interested in triangles? I know Pythagoras was interested in triangles, but when am I going to need these triangles in my life? And there are lots of arguments for the curriculum, lots of things that should be in and lots of things that should be out. But the most important message is this is the opportunity for them to get themselves organized and prove to themselves that they can actually do this, because passing your GCSEs is logistical and it's habit based. It's not about ability. So our mission at AYP is to change the world one brain at a time, and we use neuroscience to do that. Now, I just want to share with you a little bit of neuroscience just because it's jaw-droppingly amazing, and the science that Mr. Brown just mentioned, synapses, etc., all of this stuff, once you give young people this information, it really helps us understand why we need to do some of these annoying things like study capture flashcards. So I'm just going to show you a little video. There's not much sound, so if you can't hear the sound, don't worry. It's just the imagery that's powerful. You're going to see a guy that was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease when he was 41, and in the video he's 51. And you're going to see, first of all, you're going to see him walking his dog. He's taking a trial drug. He's part of a random controlled trial, and then you're about to see him trying to make a cup of tea with the full symptoms of Parkinson's, age 51. So Parkinson's is a disease of movement control, and you can see how difficult it is to do a simple thing like pull a tea bag out of a cup of tea. And then what you're going to see now is he's now on a drug that smooths that movement symptoms out. That is a week later. 6 times a day.
Andrew, you might need to just press on the share that tab if it's on a different tab.
Oh, okay. Did it not play? Am my slides advancing, Tim?
Your slides, it's just on slideshow at the minute, so you can see all the slides, but not a big individual one.
So if I click like that, do they change that way?
They change, yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably going to stick to that mode. I don't know what's wrong with it, but I want to make sure that everyone sees the slides. So you didn't see that amazing video, did you? I might just play it again. Can you see that now?
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay. So walking the dog. This is him with his symptoms, trying to get a cup of tea made in the kitchen. And that's a week later after he's been on the drug 6 times a day for a week. So this is an experimental drug, is part of a random controlled trial. The question you might ask is, why am I showing you this? I'm showing you this because this is neuroscience. Neuroscience is amazing, and it's getting into the deepest folds of our brain and helping us understand how it works. And as Mr. Brown said at the beginning, the bit of kit walking around at the top of your children's neck is the most powerful bit of kit in the known universe. It's computationally more powerful than all the mobile phones in the world, and it's got 700 times more storage capacity in a single millimeter cube, 120 million connections in a single millimeter cube of the brain. It can absolutely pass its GCSEs, but it needs to be supported to do the daily habits that will change it, to restructure it, to hold the knowledge that it needs to hold. And that's our mission. That's our work with the school for the last 3 years. So we say to young people, you've got everything you need at the top of your neck. We've got to help you work that system in a way that supports you to remember and access all of that information in those exams. If you just think about the GCSEs from the brain's perspective, imagine a stack of paper from the floor halfway up, maybe twice the height of a chair. Imagine that amount of information. That's what's being taught to young people over 2 years. And then in 10 months' time, 8 months' time, they're going to be tested on just 20% of it, and they've got to remember all of it. So the process of imbibing that information needs to be engaged now. Actually, we need to start that process now. So how do we do that? How do we take an intractable problem and turn it into a solution? By tiny habits. We are, all of us, particularly us as adults, actually, we're more subject to this than children are. We are a set of habitual algorithms that run the entire time, habits that we have built through our experiences. If you're making a cup of tea, you don't need to think it through. It's a habit, it's built, it runs. And we've got to build and construct the habits that will build the neural architecture that helps these young people smash their GCSEs. And it was really interesting, that data around 0.81 of a grade increase in terms of study capture. We coach students over 2 years with study capture, and we tend to see a 2-grade increase, and that would work out in terms of that data. It's really powerful. So the first thing is, the brain of your child generates a mind, and that mind has a bunch of opinions, and its opinions are often, I really don't know how to revise, they might say, or I really don't want to revise. And I always say to young people, who does? There are so many more interesting things to do than revise. So we need to get through the kind of emotional barrier of not wanting to. And once we're through that barrier and we've got habits, it will be much easier to revise. So in terms of preparing for exams, we need to deal with this idea of change. And we are all on this spectrum of change somewhere. Some of us might be stuck in relation to our beliefs about our ability to succeed in certain subjects. But the thing that makes the difference between being stuck and a solution seeker is nothing more or less than our decision to change our behavior. If we've convinced ourselves that we can't get better at our subject, that is a cop-out. We're saying to ourselves, I can't get better at that subject, so therefore we don't even try. It might mean that that subject is more difficult for us, but practice crushes any complexity over time. We can rise to that challenge. And the way the brain works in relation to learning is always hard, and then it becomes easy. That hard to easy journey is because we are creating new pathways. So we always say to students, be in no doubt, you can do this, you can pass your GCSEs. So let's talk about memory. Let's talk about all of us and how a brain generates us. There are 3 versions of us sitting in our head at any one time. Past self is all our brain's experiences, the ones we remember, but many, many experiences that we don't remember. Our brain automatically records experiences. If you go back to a place you lived in 10 years ago, walk down a street you've not walked down for 10 years, out of your memory, unlocked by the context of being in that street, will be lots of information from that time. So our brain is remembering information automatically. Now, in terms of GCSE, we need that information to be available, and we need to strengthen that information repeatedly so it is available at least for the next 10 months. Present self is the one where we're working the neural architecture to build the structures we need. And future self is those goals, those aims, those aspirational goals we've got in relation to our grades, etc. So those 3 versions of ourself. And what I always say to young people is, this is the moment when you move from childhood, and I know they're not children, they are certainly most of the way to being an adult, but I often think life is quite cruel to young people and children because we start our lives experiencing lots of want to activities. When we're children, it's all about want to, and then we get to secondary school and there's a bit more have to, and obviously in later primary school there's a bit more have to, but when we get to GCSEs there's suddenly a lot more have to, and then we arrive in the adult world and realize that have to is mostly every day, and there's a little bit of want to. So this is about them taking responsibility for themselves with the right tools and the fantastic support in order for them to feel that sense that they did this, and only they can do this. We can support them. You will absolutely support them. We will support them. Their teachers will support them, but it is their brain, and no amount of AI, no amount of computers, no amount of any additional support will get the brain to change unless they are doing something to change their own brains. So the question I always ask provocatively of young people at this point is, can you spend around an hour a day preparing for your GCSEs? Now that hour is self-directed learning. That's not in lessons. That's them sitting down and doing some focused learning, some of the practice reps, study reps, etc., which I'll talk about in a while. And they might groan at that and look at me. And then I will ask a question around, well, what else do you do for an hour a day? And what impact will that thing have on your future? GCSEs will have an impact on your future. Obviously, they are much more significant as individuals than any grade is, and they're much more important than any grade, but they can get really good grades. And when I'm speaking to boys about this, because boys tend to gain more than girls do, I ask them to think about a job interview in the future where they're sitting across from a formidable panel of people, and the people say, right, can you waggle your thumbs really quickly? There's no job interview where that is a question. The ability to waggle your thumbs and secure great results at Call of Duty isn't a brilliant skill in terms of moving us forward. So an hour a day, I'll talk about how to do that. And the next question to deal with is belief. It isn't about ability. Our brain changes on the basis of how we use it. So we've got to get our beliefs in a row. And Mr. Brown talked about effortful topics. Those are the ones where young people have an emotional reaction that's a kind of cold reaction to that subject. You know, for lots of students, because they have to do subjects, core subjects like English, maths and science, those subjects often take a bit of an emotional pummeling from students. But if you don't feel good towards a subject, if you find it difficult or boring, you might generate a set of beliefs around it that you can't improve at that subject. That's wrong. Your rate of improvement might be slower than it is in subjects you really enjoy, but you will improve. So we've got to make sure they get their beliefs in the right place, that they've got growth affirming beliefs which drive growth affirming behaviors. The behavior we want most of all is practice and revision, and we'll explain that in a while. We don't want growth defeating beliefs which move us away from the directions we want to go in. So if you don't take responsibility now, you'll be wondering when what would have happened if I had, and future self needs you to. If you got in a DeLorean and traveled forward in time, and I'm always upset sometimes when young people in the audience don't even know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about DeLoreans, but I'm sure people in that audience do. If you travel into the future and asked your future self what they should say to you now, and I ask young people that when they're starting their A-levels, what advice would you give yourself at the beginning of year 10? They would give them the advice that actually you as parents would give them. Knuckle down, get on with it, focus, you can do this. And we know this as adults very much, that the mirror isn't the best way of seeing what we're like. Our lives are. And upsettingly, every opportunity in the future looks like hard work in the present. And effort is required. We're all searching, many of the young people perhaps searching on TikTok for easy, quick solutions. There is no easy, quick solution to this. There is a long and permanent fix, but it doesn't actually take that long. So people don't decide their futures, people decide their habits. So what are we talking about? We're talking about this bit of kit at the top of the brain, the neocortex, 2 to 5 millimeters thick. That is where you're going to pass your exams. That is where your memories are accessed. They're stored all over the brain, but that neocortex is the site of human mental flexibility. That's where we're able to access and model and change our responses in a way that animals can't. And the thickness of the neocortex determines the trajectory of our lives. And these 4 psychosocial forces, our habits, going to be crucial in relation to GCSEs, and I'll talk about more of those in a second. Our relationships, relationships at home, our relationships with our friends, our relationship with ourselves, and our goals enrich and thicken our neocortex, giving us more bandwidth. If we don't have those things in a good space, we've got less bandwidth, we're more emotional, and we're really struggling to motivate ourselves, and more on the management of stress and those things shortly. So the rules that run our brain are these rules. Whatever we get our brain to do repeatedly, it will make it easier for us to do that thing, whether or not that thing is good for us or not. So that's really important. If we practice something, even if we don't like it, we will get better at it. And at the level of the brain cell, brains learn automatically. Whether that information is accessible in our consciousness depends on how many times it's been repeated. But brains will learn automatically through repeat signals, changing the valency of synapses, which then changes the structure of the brain. And you end up with these myelinated axons where information is moving at 256 miles an hour. So we are all shaping our brain every single day. So GCSEs is also a test of building these skills of executive function. If you think back to when you were children and young people, parents, planning wasn't maybe one of our strong suits as children and young people. And planning is a skill. It's not something we're born with. It's a skill we build into the circuitry of our brain. Organization, working memory, attention, these are skills. And GCSEs build all of these skills. These are the skills that are going to enable us to chart our way through adult world. And they sit in that neocortex. So the first mission, before we get to revision, we've got to talk about looking after the neocortex. Now, the neocortex is very vulnerable to stress. When we're stressed, upsettingly, blood leaves the neocortex, reducing the energy supply to the neurons, meaning they become underpowered. Why would biology do that to us? Because on the African savannah, stress was a predator come to eat us. So blood leaving the brain and heading to the legs so we could run faster was quite helpful. Now, stress is, oh, I've got an exam next week. We get stressed and we become upsettingly more stupid when our blood drains from our neocortex. We've got less mental flexibility. So that process of stress is caused by our sympathetic nervous system coming on. That is the system that deals with change and uncertainty, and it gets us ready for action by releasing sugar and cortisol and adrenaline. And we have these symptoms of sympathetic nervous system activation. So the mocks that students are about to go through, all of these processes are incredibly important in terms of training the body physiologically to deal with the new environment of the exams. And obviously they've had year 10 exams as well. But we've got to manage this sympathetic nervous system. I love Mr. Saunders' 8-8-8 idea. The 8 hours of time for themselves, the 8 hours of sleep. Those 8 hours of time for themselves and 8 hours of sleep are about being out of this sympathetic nervous system in the opposite system, which is called the parasympathetic nervous system. So the parasympathetic nervous system is effectively the recharge cable for human brains. Children often worry about making sure their phone is charged and not really thinking about how their brain is charged. So we need to help them understand that we need to positively manage the stress that we're going to experience, and that stress is not a bad thing. A life with no stress is a life of utter boredom. There is positive stress and negative stress, and we don't want them to be so stressed that they're feeling anxious, but it's managing that stress positively. So we can use our body and our brain to manage that stress. And we can choose to use positive coping strategies. But if we don't use positive coping strategies, we will be left with maladaptive reactions, which are problematic because they mean we don't focus and we don't sit down and do our revision. So this is a big list of positive coping strategies. We do lots of coaching with young people and adults, and these are lots of positive coping strategies. All of them activate that parasympathetic nervous system and calm the system down. The beauty of the human brain is many different people will have different sorts of positive coping strategies. But this next list is really interesting, I always think. These are maladaptive reactions. This is what happens if you don't deploy positive coping strategies. You get stuck. with negative feelings, you get stuck with meltdowns, you get stuck with overthinking, rumination, and kind of stress. So if we think about the brain in relation to preparation for exams, what's going to happen is we might find ourselves getting stressed in preparation for exams because we're worried about whether or not we're going to pass the exams. And what happens in that situation is the brain's worry system, which is just behind
You just,
ourselves.
you just froze on our screen for a moment, Andrew. You're back.
Okay. Sorry, worried that the connection. So when we're worried, our brain generates these cognitive distortions, which are negative predictions of the future. So cognitive distortions are catastrophizing, jumping to conclusions, blaming, emotional reasoning. So jumping to conclusions might be, I can't do this question in the exam. I'm therefore going to fail on my exams. I'll never get into college or get a job. Now, those are negative predictions generated by the brain's anxiety system responding to the challenge and uncertainty of exams. And to calm that system, we need a plan. We need a set of responses we apply, not each week, not each month, but every day. And if we get those systems right and those routines right, we're going to engage well with this process, and actually we're going to do brilliantly in our exams. So the process we need to first be aware of is how we manage stress. We want to avoid this state. Frazzlement, we might all feel a bit like this sometimes, particularly when it's raining again. How can it rain so much? Frazzlement is a stress brain, a brain that is activating its sympathetic nervous system for too long. And these are the symptoms of a frazzled brain. We've got reduced mental flexibility. We are engaged in more habitual reactions. We might experience more episodes of mental illness. We get ill more often. We've got less bandwidth, not a good space to be a successful study athlete. They've got to think of themselves as the asset. They are the asset in their lives. They need to look after the kit they're in. So we need to manage that system in a balanced way. You'll be familiar with these, the 12 rocks of well-being. These are the recharge habits that your body and brain need you to do each day. So 8 hours, Mr. Saunders said, for sleep, spot on. 8 hours, me time. But amongst that me time, you need to be doing your 12 rocks of well-being. That's 50% of your well-being sorted. And we've now got an app, which I'll send to you when I send these slides through, where young people can log their 12 rocks of well-being every day. You keep all the data on your phone. We don't see it, but it's all about young people getting into the habit of making sure their 12 rocks of well-being are in a good space. The app also has information that explains why these things are so important in terms of managing stress. The app also helps you measure the level of stress that you're under and you're experiencing. So that's about well-being, which manages your worry system. And the other thing that helps manage the worry system is having a plan. So you're in a brilliant school. There's a lot of resources and a lot of support. And the reason we're doing this now is to provide lots of information ahead so the plan can be built. And there are lots of little videos on the Neuro Ninja Hub, which I'll send a link through when I send these slides through, where students can access the information I'm about to describe in little bite-sized chunks that are ready for them when they want to use those things. So it's about building habits. And Mr. Brown's already mentioned study capture and flashcards, and I won't really talk about those massively now, but just to mention that they're about repetition. If you get 7 or 8 repetitions occurring amongst a group of brain cells, that really shifts the synaptic strength and begins to build a pathway that makes that information available later. That's all a memory is, an event being reprocessed enough by the brain in order for it to be available in the present, which is what we want to happen in May and June when the exams are, that information has been uploaded through repetition, that is available in the present. And that process of strengthening is boosted if the brain experiences daily repetition. So if you do your study capture, which is a process of capturing the day's study, or you do your flashcards, and I will mention flashcards in a bit more detail in a second, that then sends a signal through the brain that whatever that information is important because it's being repeated. And then a structure called the hippocampus, deep in the middle of the brain, will refire those circuits overnight, maybe 5, 6, 7 more times, boosting the strength of that memory. Now, we all know as adults, O-levels, if any of you out there are old enough to do O-levels, I am, or GCSE knowledge has faded now. And the reason it's faded is because we've not used that circuitry. The brain is constantly repurposing that circuitry. So that's study capture. But let's talk about flashcards and a particular kind of flashcard. So that process of repetition that Mr. Brown described is enormously boosted by using this particular kind of flashcard. And it doesn't work for every subject. As Mr. Brown said, mind maps are really good when you're connecting ideas together, trying to synthesize things and make associations and connections. But Freya flashcards are really good for getting brute force facts. Science is full of them. History is full of them. There's aspects of English literature where you've got to learn quotes and things. A Freya flashcard divides the information into 4 quadrants. So if I show you a completed one for transpiration in biology, you've got a statement, you elaborate that statement, you give an example, and in this example it's an experiment using a colored dye going through celery, and then you've got an image. Each of those quadrants fires different circuitry around the brain: visual circuitry, diagrammatic circuitry, auditory circuitry, speech circuitry if they speak out the flashcard as well. You've got 4 or 5 different sets of neurons firing, which gives the hippocampus much more connectivity to engage with when it's refiring the circuits at night. And then, as Mr. Brown mentioned, that box system, we suggest to students that they generate a grid like this, where they just associate a subject with a particular day of the week and a particular color of flashcard, and make a couple of flashcards for that subject each day of the week for which that subject is allocated. So on a Monday for this student it's English, on a Tuesday it's maths. You're making 2 or 3 either back and front flashcards or Freya flashcards, and you're piling them up in that box system, where on the left hand side you've got interleaved flashcards, lots of different subjects interleaved by color, and you're just going through those flashcards. These habits, study capture and flashcards, are 5 minutes long. They take longer to moan about than they take to do, and the earlier they begin this process, the quicker they begin to benefit from the memory strengthening parts of this process. Now, I just want to mention this a little bit because I've done lots of coaching of young people, and I was thinking of a particular young person I did last year who did A-levels, and she wasn't at Bishop Lafayette, she was at a school in a college in Brighton. But throughout this process of study capture and flashcards, she kept saying to me, Andrew, this is not working. This is not working. This is not working. And I said, it is absolutely working, but you're not going to necessarily be able to access everything that you've learned until you put yourself in front of questions, because memory, if you think about your own memory, memory is context bound. You don't remember the lyrics of the song and then the music starts and the lyrics of the song are there. You go into the exam and you don't remember exactly about transpiration, and then you've got a question about transpiration. And if you've done this brute force stuff, that context, that exam question, is a key that unlocks that memory. So that brute force process, and students sometimes say to me, this isn't working. And that's because that information, transpiration, etc., isn't necessarily going to be accessible without the context. That's why the testing reps are really important as well, to test that information is in a secure space. Mind maps have been mentioned, as have effortful topics. Let's talk briefly, because I realise I'm up against it in terms of time. Let's talk about study reps. Now, the sweet spot for human attention depends on the person, depends on the time of day, is somewhere between 20 and 25 minutes. And then we need a bit of a break, because when we're concentrating, the brain is focused. It's using an excitatory neurotransmitter called glutamate to focus the attention on whatever it is we're focused on and blotting out any other distractions. That glutamate builds up, and we need to step away from the work for maybe 10 minutes after 25 minutes, walk about, empty the dishwasher, play with the dog in the garden, and then come back. We don't want to be studying for more than about 25 minutes in a go, because we need to give our brain a small break in order for it to come back refreshed. And then there are 3 flavors of rep. As Mr. Brown said, there's a learning rep when you're trying to learn something or go back over something you've forgotten. There's a practice rep when you're trying to bring it into sharp focus. And testing reps are incredibly powerful, and students often avoid testing themselves because they're worried they won't know the answer. It's really important to understand the research around testing, even if you do a test for something for which you haven't learnt it. So you do a test for which you have no information. Obviously, you don't do very well in that test. But then if you revise that information, you learn that information more quickly as a result of not doing well in the test, because effectively, brains like to complete. They're completer finishers. So they've got a gap in their knowledge presented to them by that test they did, and then they seek the information that fills that gap. So it's incredibly powerful testing, and we'd highly recommend that students test themselves with past paper questions, low stakes quizzes, multiple choice quizzes. There are lots of apps out there, lots of websites that do that process, but don't rely on the apps to just do it. Use the apps, absolutely, but make sure that you're using a mix of different strategies to get this information into your brain. And I'm just going to quickly, I'm not going to show you the video, but just mention how a learning rep works. A learning rep is if you're going over something you maybe were taught back in year 10 and you just can't remember it. You spend a little bit of time at the beginning of a learning rep, just 5 minutes, writing down anything at all that you can remember about that topic. And you can see here this student has remembered a little bit about transpiration, but hasn't, at that last point there, holes in the leaf stir, haven't exactly remembered it, but they've begun to warm up the circuitry of memory around that information. Then they watch a resource. I would highly recommend Cognito videos on YouTube. They're free. They cover all of the curriculum for science at GCSE and also maths, 5-minute videos. They watch that video, they watch it again, summarize that information. Then if they want to turn that information into practice materials, they might make some flashcards, front and back flashcards, or they might make some Freya flashcards. And then finally, once they've gone through this process, so a learning rep might be 20 minutes, a practice rep might be 20, 25 minutes, and then they find a past paper question on the topic and they test themselves in a testing rep. And it's a really powerful way of hugely boosting the memory process. So if they can begin the process of building reps in, if they could build maybe a rep in a day, 25 minutes, could be a testing rep, could be a practice rep, could be a learning rep, and build in those study routines, they're going to hugely boost their revision. And the power of this stuff is when we get through to Easter and that fantastic opportunity they've got to go on the sailboat and do all those activities around their revision, it will reduce the amount of revision they have to do by about 50 or 60%. So we're using every day of the course to build the structures that they need. So on your study capture sheet, if the information's red, you do a learning rep. If the information's orange, you do a practice rep. And if you feel really confident, you test yourself with a testing rep. I think I'm in the time. So we do coaching through the school. That's referred by colleagues in the school. We've also got the app. I'll send all these slides with the QR codes so you can download them. We've got our website where there's lots of information as well. We've got the Neuroninja Hub, which I'll send you another link to. And we've even got a little podcast now where we talk about brains excitedly. I just want to say to the students listening to this, because this is being recorded, you can absolutely do this. We have worked with students for the last 7 years, and we have seen students move from grade 3s and 4s at this point in year 11 up to grades 6s and 7s through processes like the ones we've gone through tonight. The technology made it. That's brilliant. Thank you for listening. I hope that was clear enough.
Thank you, Andrew. That was great. Thank you. Andrew, are you able to just stop presenting for a minute?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, so what extra support can we give your youngsters here in school? So something that Mr. White, one of our deputy heads, created last year, he's created this revision Google site for all of our year 10s and all of our year 11 students. It's a site that they can access via their Bishop Luffer logins. They can access it here in school or they can access it at home. If you click on this site itself, when we actually come to look at the site itself, you'll find that there's all sorts of materials, there's all sorts of links in there. Each of our faculties, each of our departments in school have got their own revision sites that's got various different exam papers on, or revision material that can be used to help. Each of the heads of faculties are experts within their area, so they've put a great deal of time into putting the site together to ensure that our youngsters can work on their own from home. We also run revision sessions. Now, the majority of our revision sessions will be after Christmas, but some faculties, some departments, as you can see there, are already running those sessions now. When I'm walking around on a Friday lunchtime, I quite often walk into Mrs. Tyler's classroom and I'll find a big group of youngsters doing their revision for their science mock exams. You can see there the history department are running 2 sessions, and they're actually running them in the evening. It's not just about what happens after school, they're doing them online. I know Mrs. Kettle, if she was here, she runs TikTok sessions, doesn't she, Mr. Jackson? And she's got, is it nearly 1 million followers on TikTok? It's some ridiculous number. Huge amount of people actually follow her and follow the revision advice that she's giving on a regular basis. The other thing that we can do is plan time really, really carefully. I know as a parent, one of the things that we did have with some of our youngsters, we've got 4, some of our youngsters, well, we had a revision plan on the fridge at home. We could actually see what was going on. If you can get your youngsters to sit down and map out, look, at the moment, I've got my homework, I've got school, so I'm going to do 2 sessions in a night, 2 30-minute sessions of revising. When we get to half term, we might need to start accessing that 888 program that we talked about earlier on and trying to pin them down to do a little bit more revision over half term and prepare themselves for the exams. But I've got some hard copies if you would like hard copies today. They'll also be accessible via the slides that we'll share with you after tonight's session. Success comes from us working together. We've had Mark in from CYE tonight. We've had Andrew from Action Your Potential. All of the teachers here want your youngsters to succeed. All of your youngsters want to succeed, and we know you want your youngsters to succeed. If we work together, we can achieve great results, and we will end up with happy youngsters leaving at the end of the year. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. If you've got any questions, I am here. Mr. Jackson's here at the back, and Andrew's actually still online, so we can ask some questions. Thank you.